The rain was coming down in sheets, not that gentle movie-type rain that makes lovers want to kiss on a park bench. This was mean, biblical, end-of-days Ohio rain, the kind that hits the windshield so hard you think God himself is up there on a cloud, drunk off his ass and throwing buckets of nails at your rig. My wipers were slapping back and forth on the panic setting, a frantic rhythm of slap-screech, barely keeping up with the deluge. They were fighting a losing battle, smearing the water more than clearing it, turning the headlights of the rare oncoming car into a blinding, impressionistic blur. It was 2 a.m. on a stretch of I-71 so dark and empty you could believe you were the last man on Earth. A ghost ship, sailing a sea of black asphalt. The only thing on my mind, the only beacon of hope in the blackness, was a triple cheeseburger with extra bacon and a side of chili cheese fries, waiting for me at a 24-hour truck stop about 50 miles down the road. I could already taste it, the greasy, salty perfection of the bacon, the way the cheap American cheese melts and gets all gooey, the satisfying heft of it in my hands. It was my holy grail, my North Star, the entire reason for my existence at this particular moment in time. My name's Sam McCarty. I drive a Peterbilt 389, cherry red with enough chrome to blind an astronaut on a sunny day. She's my baby, my office, and my home. Her name is Big Red, because I'm not what you'd call creative, but I am what you'd call loyal. And inside that baby, it's just me, the warm, comforting smell of old coffee that's been sitting on the burner a little too long, the ever-present perfume of diesel fumes that clings to everything I own, and the faint, greasy memory of yesterday's French fries. At 6'4" and a biscuit shy of 300 pounds, I take up a good bit of space. The cab is my kingdom, and I'm the king. The captain's chair is my throne, worn in all the right places to fit my particular brand of big-ass architecture. A big, hungry king on a quest for processed meat and melted cheese. The rumble of the big Cummins engine under the floorboards is the soundtrack to my life. A deep, steady purr that I feel more in my bones than I hear with my ears. It's a comforting vibration, a constant reminder that I'm moving, earning, living. It's the heartbeat of my entire world. That's when I saw it, just at the flickering edge of my high beams, a little shape on the shoulder of the road, a smudge of color against the gray curtain of rain. My first thought was a deer, maybe a big dog that had gotten loose. We see it all the time out here, but it wasn't moving right. It was too still, too upright. My heart, which had been happily chugging along to the rhythm of the diesel engine, did a kick flip and jumped straight into my throat, lodging itself behind my Adam's apple. It looked like a kid. A little kid in a yellow raincoat, no bigger than a damn fire hydrant, standing alone in a hurricane. A cold dread, colder than the rain, washed over me. This is the kind of thing that gives truckers nightmares. My foot didn't just press the brake. It tried to stomp a hole through the floorboard. The whole rig protested, a symphony of hissing air brakes and groaning metal. 18 tires screamed on the slick, wet asphalt as thousands of pounds of truck and cargo fought against momentum. I felt the trailer behind me start to get a little squirrely, a gentle sway that I felt in the seat of my pants, a terrifying reminder of how quickly things can go wrong out here. One wrong move, and I'm a 50,000-pound metal accordion scattered across 3 lanes. But you don't see a kid on the side of the interstate in the middle of a thunderstorm and just keep driving. You just don't. Not unless you want that image burned on the inside of your eyelids for the rest of your life, popping up every time you close your eyes to sleep. I muscled the big rig onto the shoulder, the whole frame shuddering to a stop like a dying beast. The smell of hot brakes and burning rubber filled the air for a second, a sharp, acrid scent cutting through the clean, earthy smell of the rain. I flicked on every light I had, running lights, fog lights, roof lights, the whole damn Christmas tree. The patch of asphalt in front of me lit up, like a damn UFO was landing, turning the pounding rain into a glittering, strobing curtain of light. The figure didn't move, just stood there, hood up, rain pouring off him in silvery streams, a tiny defiant statue in the middle of a swirling chaos. My gut was twisted into a pretzel. This was bad. This was cop cars and paperwork and hours of questions I didn't have answers to. This was the end of my cheeseburger quest and the beginning of a long, shitty night. I killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening, a vacuum where the comforting rumble used to be. It was filled only by the relentless drumming of rain on the roof and the frantic thumping of my own pulse in my ears. The world outside the cab seemed to vanish, replaced by the sound of my own anxiety. I leaned across the vast expanse of the passenger seat, my gut pressing uncomfortably against the steering wheel, and rolled down the window. The electric motor whined in protest against the storm, and a blast of cold, wet air shot into the cab, smelling of ozone and wet earth, and something green like cut grass. It was a shock to the system after the stale warmth of the cab, waking me up, sharpening my senses. "Hey, you all right out there?" I yelled, my voice booming over the storm, big and loud like it always is. It's a voice made for yelling over engines and shouting orders at lumpers. The little figure looked up. The yellow hood fell back, and it wasn't a kid. Not even close. My brain stuttered, the gears grinding to a halt. It was a woman, a very, very small woman. Her face was all sharp angles and high cheekbones, with dark eyes that seemed to soak up the light from my truck and hold it there like captured stars. Her hair was plastered to her forehead, dark and wet and spiky. Water dripped from the tip of her nose and her chin, tracing paths down her neck. But it was what she did next that really threw my brain's transmission into reverse and sent it careening off a cliff. She reached into the pocket of her oversized raincoat, pulled out a short, fat cigarillo, and stuck it defiantly between her lips. It looked comically large in her small face, like a prop from a cartoon. Then, in a voice that was gravelly and low, a voice that sounded like it gargled with whiskey and nails for breakfast, she yelled back, "Got a light, big guy?" I just stared. The triple cheeseburger, the chili cheese fries, the 50 miles to the truck stop. It all evaporated. My brain was a blue screen of death. A little person, a dwarf, out here in the middle of nowhere, in a storm that was trying to wash Ohio off the map, wanting a smoke. The world had stopped making sense. The script for the movie of my life had just been thrown out, and a new, much weirder writer had taken over. My hand, which can palm a whole cantaloupe, fumbled for the Zippo I keep in the cup holder. It felt clumsy, like I was wearing oven mitts. My fingers suddenly felt like fat, useless sausages. I leaned way over the passenger seat, stretching my arm out the open window into the deluge. The rain immediately soaked my sleeve, cold and shocking against my warm skin, running down my arm into my armpit. The Zippo flame flickered wildly in the wind as she leaned in, cupping her small hands around mine to shield it. Her fingers were tiny, but her grip was surprisingly firm, her touch sending a weird little buzz up my arm. For a split second, in the flickering glow of the lighter flame, I saw her face clearly. Her eyes were green, I realized, a deep, intense, defiant green. Her lips were full, wrapped around the tip of the cigarillo. The tip glowed a defiant red against the darkness, a tiny beacon of rebellion in the storm. She took a long, slow drag, her cheeks hollowing out for a second, then blew a perfect smoke ring that the wind immediately tore to shreds. "Thanks," she grunted. Then her eyes traveled up and up and up, from my tires to the grill, to the windshield, to the top of my cab, like she was sizing up Mount Everest. It was a look of professional assessment, not just idle curiosity, like a climber planning her route. "You headin' south?" I could only nod, my tongue apparently on vacation, having packed its bags and left my mouth without so much as a goodbye note. My brain was still trying to reboot. "Mind if I hitch a ride?" she asked, her voice laced with impatience. The damn circus bus broke down a few miles back, and these assholes left me. Circus bus. The weirdness dial just kept getting cranked to 11. My mind conjured an image of a brightly painted bus stranded on the shoulder, clowns spilling out into the rain like sad, soggy confetti, their big red noses running. Yeah, sure, get in," I finally stammered, my trucker brain slowly kicking back into gear. Normalcy was gone. Might as well lean into the crazy. What's one more weird story for the road? I had a collection of them, but this one already felt like it was going to be a Hall of Famer. She shot me a grin, a flash of white teeth in the dark, stormy night. "Don't mind if I do." Then she squared up to the side of my truck, took a puff of her cigarillo, and looked at the first step, which was level with her chest. And folks, let me tell you, the show was just getting started. Getting into a semi is a process, even for a guy my size. You got 3 steep metal steps and a couple of grab handles. It's a climb. For her, it looked like a sheer cliff face. She was staring at it like a puzzle she was about to solve with brute force and sheer willpower. Yes, sir. You need a hand with that?" I asked, a horrifying image flashing through my mind of me trying to hoist her up like a duffel bag and accidentally dropping her. My hands are built for gripping steering wheels and lifting heavy things, not for delicate operations. I'd probably break her. She shot me a look over her shoulder that could curdle milk. She took the smoldering cigarillo out of her mouth and with a practiced motion tucked it behind her ear like a carpenter with a pencil. "I got it, Goliath," she said, her voice dripping with a sarcasm so thick you could spread it on toast. And then she moved. She didn't climb. She attacked the truck. She grabbed the bottom step with both hands, the muscles in her back and shoulders bunching under the yellow raincoat. I could see the definition even through the thick, wet material. She wasn't just pulling, she was generating force. She planted a small boot on the side of the massive fuel tank, finding a foothold I didn't even know was there, and launched herself upwards with a sharp, powerful grunt. It wasn't clumsy, it was explosive, like watching a gymnast on a pommel horse or a spider monkey scaling a tree. Her movements were precise, economical, and packed with a shocking amount of power. One fluid motion into another, hand over hand, foot finding purchase, a coil and release of pure athletic energy. In 3 seconds flat, she was at the top, yanking the heavy door open with a force that should have been impossible, and swinging herself inside. She landed in the passenger seat with a soft thump and a squeak of leather. The cab door slammed shut behind her, cutting off the roar of the storm and plunging us back into the cozy, rumbling world of my Peterbilt. The sudden quiet was heavy, thick, pressing in on my eardrums. All I could hear was the tick-tick-tick of the cooling engine and the sound of her breathing, a little faster now from the exertion, a series of quick, sharp puffs. And that's when I got a real good look at her. She was soaked to the bone. Her yellow raincoat was shedding water all over my floor mats, creating a small puddle. But I couldn't have cared less. My floor mats had seen worse. Much worse. She unzipped it with a decisive rip, and underneath was something I was not prepared for, at all. She was wearing some kind of outfit, a one-piece thing, black as midnight and covered in a million tiny silver sequins that glittered and shimmered in the dim, multicolored glow of the dashboard lights. It looked like something a figure skater would wear to the Olympics, if the Olympics were held at a biker rally in Vegas. It was tight, real tight. Not I should have bought a size up tight, but poured into it tight. The kind of tight that makes you wonder how she got into it, and more importantly, how she gets out of it. The fabric was thin, and the rain had made it cling to her body like a second skin. And damn, what a body it was. She was tiny, sure, but she was stacked, solid, compact. Every inch of her was corded with lean, dense muscle. Her shoulders were strong and defined. Her stomach was a washboard of flat, hard planes, and her legs, though short, were powerful-looking, with calves like two clenched fists. She wasn't a fragile doll to be put on a shelf. She was a firecracker, a little stick of dynamite just waiting for a match. Her feet, in their little black boots, dangled a good foot and a half off the floor. The giant, plush leather passenger seat seemed to swallow her whole, making her look like a little action figure someone had sat in a dollhouse that was built to the wrong scale. The contrast was jarring, and for reasons I couldn't quite explain, incredibly fascinating. It was messing with my sense of proportion, making my own huge frame feel even more massive. She shook her head like a wet dog, sending a spray of water droplets flying across the dash and onto my arm. The cold drops on my warm skin made me flinch. Her dark hair was cut in a short, spiky bob that was already starting to dry in rebellious clumps. She ran her small hands through it, pushing it off her face. Her eyes, I noticed now that she was closer, were that deep, startling green, cat eyes. They were scanning the cab, taking everything in with a sharp, intelligent curiosity. My collection of empty coffee cups, the pin-up calendar from the tire shop on the back wall, the half-eaten bag of beef jerky wedged in the door pocket. She wasn't judging, just observing, cataloging. Her gaze lingered on the calendar for a second, a flicker of amusement in her eyes, before moving on. She fished the damp cigarillo from behind her ear, found my Zippo in the cup holder without asking, and lit it herself with a practiced, single-handed flick. A cloud of sweet, cherry-scented smoke filled the cab, mixing with the smell of rain on hot asphalt and something else. Her. She smelled like the storm, like cheap tobacco, and like some kind of sweet, floral perfume, like a wildflower growing in the cracked pavement behind a biker bar. It was a weirdly intoxicating combination that was already starting to mess with my head. A scent that didn't belong in my world of diesel and grease, but was staking its claim anyway. "Nice rig," she said, her voice a low purr. She took a drag, the red tip of the cigarillo illuminating her sharp features in the dark. "You live in this thing?" "Pretty much," I grunted, my voice sounding rough to my own ears. I turned the key. The big Cummins diesel engine roared to life beneath us, the whole cab vibrating with its deep, resonant power. The vibration traveled right through my seat, up my spine, and into the base of my skull. It's a feeling I've known my whole life, but with her here, it felt different. I felt it, and I could see her feeling it, too. A little shiver went through her, and it had nothing to do with the cold. Her eyes widened just a fraction, her lips parting slightly, as she felt the raw power of the machine she was sitting in. I cranked the heater on full blast. Hot, dry air started pumping into the cab, smelling of dust and hot metal, fighting back the damp chill. "Name's Trixie," she said, extending a small hand over the center console. I took it, my massive paw completely engulfing hers. Her skin was cool from the rain, but her grip was like a little vice, strong, confident. Not a handshake you'd forget. It was a working woman's handshake. "Sam," I said. My voice was still a little shaky. "So, circus, huh?" She grinned again, that flash of white teeth. "That's right. Acrobat. Trapeze artist. The whole shebang." She gestured down at her sequined outfit as if it were a pair of overalls. "This is my work uniform." I put the truck in gear, grabbing the long metal shifter that stood between us. My knee brushed against the side of her seat as I released the parking brake. The space in the cab, which usually felt huge and empty, suddenly felt incredibly small, crowded, charged. Every cubic inch of air seemed to be buzzing with a new kind of energy. It was like she was taking up more space than her small frame should allow, filling it with her presence. I checked my mirrors, my eyes lingering for a second too long on her reflection in the passenger side glass. She was just a small, glittering shape in the big dark mirror. But she was watching me, a curious, amused look in her green eyes. She caught me looking, and instead of looking away, her smile widened just a little, a silent challenge. I pulled the rig back onto the highway, the 18 wheels humming on the wet pavement. The hider was starting to work its magic. Steam was beginning to rise from her clothes, little wisps of vapor unfurling from her shoulders and legs, like she was simmering. The windows were fogging up at the edges, the outside world starting to blur, cocooning us. The air in the cab was getting thick, hot, and it wasn't just from the heater. "So what's a circus acrobat doing on the side of I-71 in the middle of the night?" I asked, trying to force a casual tone into my voice, trying to keep my eyes on the damn road. It was getting harder by the second. My focus was split between the white lines rushing toward me and the impossible glittering creature sitting beside me. The sequined outfit was drying under the direct blast of the heater, and in the process the thin fabric was shrinking, tightening, defining every single curve and muscle on her compact frame. It was like watching a statue being carved out of shadow and sparkle right there in my passenger seat. The sequins caught the passing headlights from the other side of the highway, sending little rainbows dancing across the roof of the cab, across her face, across my hands on the wheel. It was hypnotic, like 1,000 tiny disco balls were having a party just for her. Trixie took another slow puff of her cigarillo, cracking her window just enough to let a thin ribbon of smoke escape into the night. Long story short, our lead clown, a real genius named Sparky, thought it'd be a brilliant idea to fill the bus's fuel tank with what turned out to be 90% backwoods moonshine he'd bought from some guy in a swamp. Engine seized up about 5 miles back. Sounded like a grenade went off in a tin can. "Moonshine?" I chuckled, the sound rumbling deep in my chest. Sounds about right for a clown. "Tell me about it," she sighed, rolling her eyes. "Anyway, the rest of the troupe, the amazing bearded lady, 2 jugglers who are way too into crystals, and about 6 other clowns, decided to hunker down and wait for a tow. I ain't got time for that. A girl's gotta work. We're supposed to be in Cincinnati for a show tomorrow afternoon." She looked at me, her green eyes glinting in the dashboard light. "Besides, I get claustrophobic with that many clowns in one place. They smell like sadness, cheap makeup, and existential dread." I let out a real laugh then, a deep booming sound that filled the whole cab. She smiled, a real smile this time, not just that sarcastic grin. It lit up her whole face, crinkling the corners of her eyes, and damn, It was a pretty smile. It made her look younger, less like a hardened road warrior, and more like someone who genuinely enjoyed the absurdity of her life. "So you're an acrobat," I said, trying to picture it, like with the flips and the trapeze and all that. "That's the one." She flicked her ash out the cracked window with a practiced snap of her finger. "Been doing it since I was 5. My whole family's in the business. We were the Flying Gallardos." She said the name with a theatrical flourish, then her face soured. But I dropped the family name. Wanted to make it on my own. Just Trixie. We drove in silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the hypnotic hum of the tires on the wet road and the rhythmic slap, slap, slap of the wipers. The heater was really cooking now. I could feel a trickle of sweat snake its way down my back, pasting my flannel shirt to my skin. The windows were getting seriously fogged up, a thick curtain of condensation creeping in from all sides, isolating us from the world. I had to wipe a circle on the windshield with the back of my big hand, just to see where I was going. The inside of the cab was becoming our own private bubble, steamy and hot and smelling of her. The heat was doing something to her perfume. It was blooming in the hot, humid air. That strange floral scent was everywhere now, wrapping around me, getting in my head, pulling my attention away from the white lines on the road. It was making me feel a little light-headed, like I'd huffed something I shouldn't have. I reached over to the little mini-fridge I keep wedged between the seats. "You want a soda or something? I got Coke, Dr. Pepper, Mountain Dew." My big hand fumbled with the latch, my fingers suddenly feeling thick and clumsy. As I pulled a can of Coke out from the cold interior, my elbow bumped her knee. It was a small touch, barely anything, but it felt like a jolt of pure electricity shot right through my arm, up my shoulder, and into my chest. My whole body tensed. It wasn't just skin on fabric. It was the solid, unyielding reality of her leg, small but dense with muscle. A little cannonball of a knee. "Sorry," I mumbled, my face suddenly feeling as hot as the heater vents. She just laughed, a low, throaty sound that vibrated in the small space. "It's a tight squeeze in here, big guy. Don't worry about it." She took the can of Coke from me, her small fingers deliberately brushing against mine as she did. Another jolt, stronger this time. Her skin was warm now, no longer chilled from the rain. The contact lingered, a tiny patch of fire on my knuckles. "Thanks." She popped the top, the sharp fizz loud in the quiet cab. I watched the muscles in her throat work as she took a long swallow, her head tilted back. Everything she did was fascinating, precise, and deliberate. There was no wasted motion. Even drinking a Coke was a performance. "You're being awful careful around me, Sam," she said, setting the can in the oversized cup holder, where it rattled around. "What do you mean?" I asked, my eyes darting from the road to her and back again, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The truck drifted a little to the right, and I had to correct it, sharply. "You're moving like you're afraid you're going to break me." She leaned forward a bit, her green eyes locking onto mine in the rearview mirror for a second. The intensity of her gaze was like a physical touch. "You think I'm made of glass?" I swallowed hard. The air was getting thicker. "Well, no, but you're, delicate." That was the wrong word, the absolute 100% grade A wrongest word in the history of words. The moment it left my mouth, I wanted to catch it and stuff it back in. Trixie threw her head back and laughed, a full-throated, genuine belly laugh that was so loud and joyful it startled me. It was a wonderful sound, echoing in the confined space, bouncing off the fogged-up glass. "Delicate?" she sputtered, wiping a tear from the corner of her eye with the back of her hand. "Oh, honey, That's the last thing I am. And then, to prove her point, she did something that made my jaw hit the floor of the cab. She reached up, her movements fluid and sure, and grabbed the plastic oh-shit handle bolted to the frame above the passenger door. With a smooth, effortless motion that defied physics, she pulled herself up. Her little boots left the seat, and she just hung there for a second, her whole body suspended in the air, her sequined form twisting slowly in the dim light like a Christmas ornament. She did a full pull-up, her chin clearing the handle easily, without so much as a grunt of effort. The muscles in her back and shoulders flexed like coiled steel cables under the tight, glittery fabric. Then she lowered herself down slowly, controlling the descent with a precision that was terrifying. My eyes were wide as dinner plates. I'd seen guys twice her size at truck stop gyms fail to do one of those, grunting and turning red in the face. She did it like she was picking up a coffee cup. She dropped back into the seat with a soft bounce, a smug, triumphant look on her face. See? Not delicate. Jesus Christ, I breathed out, the words a little prayer of disbelief. Okay, point taken. But she wasn't done. She grinned, a mischievous, wicked little grin that made my stomach do a nervous flip. That ain't nothing. She put her hands flat on the dashboard for balance. Then she lifted her legs, both of them. She bent them, folded them, and in a move that seemed to break several laws of anatomy and common sense, she tucked her feet right behind her head. Her knees were pointed at the ceiling. Her sequined butt was pointed right at me, and her face was peeking through the triangle her arms and torso made, her expression one of pure, unadulterated showing off. She was basically a human pretzel, a very flexible, very sparkly, very distracting human pretzel. The sequins stretched over the powerful curve of her ass, catching the red and green lights of the dash and throwing them around the cab like a disco ball aimed squarely at my libido. "This is my warm-up," she said, her voice slightly muffled by her own thighs. My brain officially short-circuited. It was like all the blood in my body decided to take a vacation from my head and head straight south for a warmer climate. The cab, which was already hot, felt like it had just become a Finnish sauna. The air was so thick and humid I could have chewed on it. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. All I could see in my peripheral vision was this impossible shape of a woman, all muscle and curves and sequins, folded up like origami in my passenger seat. I swerved slightly, the big tires hitting the rumble strip on the shoulder with a loud "Brat" that shook the whole cab. "Eyes on the road, big guy," she said, her muffled voice full of laughter. She unfolded herself with the same fluid grace, her legs landing softly back on the seat. She sat there, looking at me, her chest rising and falling a little faster now, a light sheen of sweat on her forehead that caught the light. "You okay over there, Sam?" she asked, a teasing lilt in her voice. "You look like you just saw a ghost." Something like that, I managed to croak out. My throat was as dry as a desert highway. I needed a drink, but I didn't dare reach for the fridge again. She slid across the plush leather seat, the sound a soft whisper against the rumble of the engine. She closed the small distance between us. The gear shift was the only thing separating us now. Her knee pressed firmly against my thigh. Not a bump, not an accident, a deliberate placement. I could feel the solid heat of her leg through the thick denim of my jeans. It was an anchor point, a focal point for all the chaotic energy buzzing through my body. I couldn't ignore it. It was a deliberate, undeniable pressure, a question being asked without words. She reached out, slowly, deliberately, and laid her hand on my bicep. Her small hand looked tiny. a child's hand, against the sheer mass of my arm. She gave it a squeeze. Her fingers dug in, testing, feeling the dense muscle underneath my flannel shirt. It wasn't a gentle touch. It was an assessment. "Wow," she whispered, her voice dropping an octave into a low, husky register that sent shivers down my spine. "Solid. You're like a big, warm mountain." She looked up at me from under her eyelashes, her green eyes dark and serious now. The teasing was gone, replaced by something raw and direct that made the hair on my arms stand up. "I like big guys," she said, her voice barely a breath of sound in the rumbling cab. "Big bears." There's something fun about the contrast. She squeezed my arm again, harder this time, a possessive little gesture. And in that moment I understood. She wasn't turned on in spite of the size difference. She was turned on because of it. It wasn't a bug, it was the feature. The thought sent a fresh wave of heat through me, so intense it made my head spin. This wasn't about me making her feel small. It was about her making me feel huge, like a force of nature she wanted to conquer, a challenge she was eager to take on. The rain was letting up outside. The wipers were just smearing water around now, their rhythm slowing to a lazy, hypnotic sweep. But inside the cab, a whole different kind of storm was brewing. And it was about to make landfall. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, trying to beat its way out. Her hand was still on my arm, a small hot brand burning right through my flannel shirt. Her knee was a point of pure, concentrated heat pressed against my leg. The smell of her, that impossible mix of rain and smoke and flowers, the look in her eyes, the impossible way she'd just folded her body. It was all swirling in my head, a potent cocktail that was making me dizzy with a feeling that was way beyond simple desire. It was curiosity. It was shock. It was a full system override. "You know," I said, and my voice came out as a rough rasp, like I'd been gargling gravel. "This front seat, it ain't exactly built for comfort." Or acrobatics. Trixie's lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. It wasn't a pretty smile anymore. It was predatory. The smile of a lioness looking at a very large, very slow wildebeest. "Oh, yeah? What are you suggesting, big guy?" "The sleeper's in the back," I said, my voice low. I nodded my head toward the thick curtain behind my seat. "Got a full-size mattress. A lot more room to stretch out." Her eyes sparkled with challenge and promise. "Show me." That's all it took. 2 words. I scanned the road ahead and saw the blue sign for a scenic turnout, a little paved rest area barely big enough for my rig, nestled in a grove of trees. It was perfect, secluded, private. I flicked my turn signal on, the click-clack sound loud and deliberate in the tense quiet. I eased the Peterbilt off the highway, the big truck crunching over the gravel at the edge of the pavement. The second the air brakes hissed, killing our forward momentum with a final shudder, the energy in the cab shifted. The low hum of the highway was gone, replaced by a thick, charged silence, broken only by the deep, guttural idle of the engine and the suddenly loud sound of our breathing. I unbuckled my seat belt. It felt like I was shedding a skin, getting rid of the last piece of my normal, everyday life. I reached back and pushed aside the heavy curtain that separated the cab from the sleeper. The space back there was my sanctuary. A bit messy, with a rumpled blanket, a pillow that had seen better days, and a couple of dog-eared paperback novels, but it was clean. The mattress took up almost the entire space, wall to wall. In the dim red glow from the dashboard, it looked like a stage, waiting for the main event. Trixie was already moving. She didn't wait for an invitation. She slid off the high passenger seat, and in the tight space between the seats and the dash, she was a whirlwind of motion. She used the seats, like pommel horses, planting her hands on the headrests and swinging herself over the center console and into the back with an agility that left me breathless. She landed on the mattress on her hands and knees, her back to me, looking over her shoulder with that wicked, triumphant grin. "Cozy," she said, her voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "I'm a big guy. Getting into the sleeper is usually a clumsy affair of turning sideways, sucking in my gut, and contorting myself in ways a man my size shouldn't. But right then, I moved with a purpose I didn't know I had. I followed her into the back, and the space immediately shrank by half. The air was instantly hot and close. I could smell the dust from the mattress, my own scent of diesel and sweat, and her intoxicating perfume, all mingling together into something primal and heavy. I sat on the edge of the bed, my back to the cab. The space was so tight my shoulders were brushing the padded walls. Trixie was still on her hands and knees in the middle of the mattress, a small, powerful silhouette against the far wall. "You know, Sam," she said, her voice a low murmur that I felt more than heard. "I spend my whole life throwing myself through the air, trusting my partners to catch me. It's all about balance, power, trusting the base to be strong enough to handle you." She crawled toward me, her movements sinuous and deliberate, like a cat stalking its prey. The sequins on her outfit scraped softly against the mattress fabric, a sound like tiny claws. "You look like a very, sturdy base." She stopped right in front of me, her knees on either side of my legs. She put her hands on my knees, her small fingers gripping the thick denim. Then she did something that flipped my entire world upside down. She pushed herself up, getting to her feet on the soft mattress. And here's the thing that broke my brain into a million tiny pieces. She was standing up, on her own 2 feet, right there in front of me, in a space where I couldn't even stand halfway up. And damn if her head wasn't right about level with my belt buckle. My breath hitched in my throat. The implication, the visual, the sheer mind-bending reality of it sent a shockwave straight through my system. My whole body went rigid, my hands clenched into fists on the bed beside me. She looked up at me, her neck craned back, a look of pure, unadulterated hunger in her eyes. "See?" she whispered. Contrast. She placed her hands on my chest, her palms flat against my pecs. They felt like 2 small, hot irons. "Lie back, Big Bear," she commanded, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Let me work." I did as I was told. I was putty in her tiny, powerful hands. I leaned back, my body a huge, sprawling landscape on the mattress. I filled the entire space. I felt like a mountain range, and she was this tiny, unstoppable force of nature about to cause an avalanche. The moment my back hit the mattress, she was on me. But not in the way you'd think. This wasn't just a woman climbing on top of a man. This was an acrobat finding her new favorite piece of equipment. She used my body like a jungle gym. She was a blur of motion, of skin and sequins and raw power. One moment she was straddling my chest, her hands braced on my shoulders, her powerful little legs squeezing my ribs with surprising strength. The next, she'd vaulted up, done some kind of handstand on my stomach, her feet brushing the low ceiling, and then spun around, her back to me, her hands planted on the mattress beside my head, her body arched over mine in a perfect, breathtaking backbend. Her face was upside down, inches from mine, her hair hanging down, brushing my cheeks. Her green eyes were wide with exhilaration. The cab was rocking, not just a little. The whole damn rig was groaning on its suspension, the frame creaking like an old ship in a storm. The tires were squishing and complaining against the wet asphalt, Any trucker passing by would think I was having a seizure or fighting off a bear. The windows, which had started to clear, were completely fogged over now, a thick white film blocking out the entire world. It was just us, in our own private, steamy universe, completely sealed off. She was a human hurricane, a whirlwind of muscle and perfume and heat. She was everywhere at once. Her lips found mine, her kisses hard and demanding, tasting of cherry tobacco and pure confidence. Her hands were exploring, mapping the sheer size of me, her fingers digging into my shoulders, my chest, my stomach, as if trying to memorize my geography. I was just trying to keep up. My hands, which could crush a beer can without thinking, felt clumsy and huge as I tried to hold on to her. It was like trying to catch a hummingbird. She was all motion, all energy. She was in complete and total control. The strongest, most dominant force I had ever encountered, all packed into a 4-foot-something frame. I managed to grab her hips, my big hands spanning her entire waist, my thumbs meeting in the front, and tried to hold her still for just a second, to ground the lightning storm. She just laughed, a breathless, exhilarated sound that was pure joy, and used my grip as a pivot point, spinning around to face me again without missing a beat. The cab wasn't just rocking. It felt like the whole damn frame was trying to learn how to tango. The suspension was singing a protest song, a high-pitched squeal that synced up with our movements. The heat was unbelievable. Sweat was pouring off both of us, our skin slick. The sequins of her outfit cold for a split second before they were warmed by my skin, leaving little indentations everywhere they pressed. The air was so heavy and wet it was hard to breathe. The deep guttural rumble of the idling engine was a primal vibration that seemed to be coming from inside my own bones, a bass line to the frantic, chaotic rhythm we were making. It felt like we were going through an earthquake in a paint shaker. The whole world was reduced to the tight confines of that sleeper cab, to the feeling of her small, hard body moving against mine, to the sound of the truck groaning in protest, and the windows fogging up until we were completely blind to everything but each other. She climbed on top of me, a tiny titan conquering a mountain, and the whole rig groaned under our combined frenzied motion, a symphony of creaking metal and straining shocks. I don't know how long we were back there. Time had stretched and warped and finally ceased to exist. All I knew was the violent rocking of the cab, the oppressive heat, and the incredible, inexhaustible energy of the woman who had taken over my world and turned it upside down. Eventually, the earthquake subsided. The frantic rhythm slowed. The groaning of the truck's suspension quieted down to a tired creak, and the only sound was the deep idle of the engine and our ragged breathing, which filled the small space like a pair of broken bellows. I was lying on my back, completely and utterly spent, annihilated. My muscles ached in ways I didn't know they could. I was gasping for air, my chest heaving. I felt like I'd just gone 10 rounds with a heavyweight champ, run a marathon, and then been tenderized with a meat mallet for good measure. And Trixie, she was perched on my chest, like a victorious little gargoyle, not even breathing hard. Her sequined outfit was still sparkling, though now it was damp with our mingled sweat. She had one of my half-smoked cigarillos, which she must have plucked from the ashtray at some point, dangling from her lips. She took a calm, leisurely drag, blowing a plume of smoke toward the fogged-up ceiling of the cab. "Not bad, big guy," she said, her voice a husky, satisfied purr that vibrated through my chest. "You're a pretty good bass." I just groaned. I couldn't even form words. My entire vocabulary had been wiped clean, the slate scrubbed by pure physical shock. All I could manage was a weak, pathetic wheeze. She slid off me, landing as silently as a cat on the mattress. She started gathering her things with an efficient, no-nonsense air. She pulled on her yellow raincoat, the plastic crinkling loudly in the sudden ringing quiet. "Where you going?" I managed to rasp, propping myself up on one elbow. The effort was monumental. My arm trembled like a leaf in the wind. "Show's in 12 hours, she said, zipping up the coat. "Gotta get to Cincinnati. You can drop me at the next exit. There's an all-night diner. I can grab a coffee and call a cab from there." I just nodded, my head feeling too heavy for my neck. Business as usual for her. For me, it felt like I'd survived a natural disaster and was now being interviewed by the local news about my harrowing experience. I dragged my sorry ass back into the driver's seat. My legs felt like jelly. My knees threatened to buckle. I felt wrecked in the best possible way. Trixie hopped back into the passenger seat as if she'd just had a refreshing 8-hour nap, not like she'd just put a 300-pound man into a coma. I drove the next 2 miles in a complete daze. The fog on the inside of the windows was so thick, I had to run the defroster on high and wipe it with my sleeve just to see the exit sign. The world outside seemed blurry and unreal, like I was looking at it through water. I pulled up in front of a brightly lit, classic-looking diner. A few lonely cars and a couple of pickups were parked out front, steam rising from their hoods in the cool, post-storm air. The neon open sign glowed a welcoming red, cutting through the misty darkness. "This is me," she said simply. She unbuckled her seatbelt. But before she got out, she leaned over the center console, grabbed my face with both her small hands, pulled me toward her, and planted a hard, fast kiss on my lips. It wasn't a romantic kiss. It was a brand, a stamp. It tasted like sweet tobacco, her unique perfume, and victory. "Thanks for the ride, Sam," she said, her green eyes twinkling with mischief. "And the workout." She opened the door and, with the same impossible monkey-like agility, climbed down the steps and dropped onto the wet pavement. She gave me a little 2-fingered salute, a final cocky farewell, then turned and walked into the diner. A tiny figure in a big yellow raincoat, disappearing into the fluorescent glare, leaving me alone in the rumbling silence of my cab. I sat there for a full minute, the engine idling, my brain slowly coming back online. I felt completely drained, like someone had pulled the plug and let all the energy run out of me. My whole body was buzzing, every muscle humming with a low-frequency vibration. My arms, my legs, even my damn eyelids felt heavy. My eyes drifted over to the passenger seat. It looked huge and empty again, but there, on the dark leather where she'd been sitting, was a single, tiny, silver sequin. It had come off her outfit. It was glittering under the dim dashboard lights, like a fallen star. I reached over and picked it up. It was so small it almost disappeared between my thumb and forefinger. I looked at the tiny, sparkling thing, then around at my massive cab, then down at my own huge hands. It was the only proof I had that the last hour hadn't been some kind of bizarre, sweat-soaked hallucination brought on by sleep deprivation and an overactive imagination. A slow smile spread across my face. I started to chuckle, a low, tired, rumbling sound that grew into a full-on laugh. It hurt my ribs to laugh, but I couldn't stop. The sheer, unadulterated absurdity of it all hit me at once. The storm, the circus bus, the sequins, the acrobatics. "Well, I'll be damned," I said to the empty cab, the little sequin glinting in my palm. "Good things really do come in small packages." I put the truck in gear and pulled away from the diner, heading for that truck stop. I was still starving for that triple cheeseburger, but I had a funny feeling that when I finally got it, I'd be too damn tired to even lift it to my mouth. And somehow, that thought made me smile even wider. Some nights, you get the meal you want, and some nights you get the meal you didn't even know you were starving for.